Brothers, how you guys doing? This is Coach Scott here with another Purple Wave Chemistry. I promised you guys I would do a really nice type it in to where hopefully you guys can read it. This is a really good decision tree so we can figure out how to name a compound or how to write the formula for it. So look right here. Our first question always is, what type of compound is it? What type of compound is it? Don't know yet. All right. So we got some things to ask here, right? So we ask this. We'll go to pen. Yeah, we'll go purple, red. Oh, I like red. So anyway, first question we've got to ask. Let's move this over a little bit. One, is it a metal? Is it a metal and a non-metal? Or is it a metal, a non-metal, and a non-metal? Or, go back here a little bit, is it a non-metal I'm making an arrow right there, and a non-metal? That'll determine what we do after that. So let's go right over here. Let's say it's a metal and a non-metal. Let's go right here. Let's work on this. Well, it's an ionic compound. Okay, we're pretty familiar with those, right? A metal and a non-metal. Recall what a metal is. It's to the left side of the periodic table. Non-metal is on the upper right side. So we're going to ask a question first. Is the first element a transition metal? Now the transition metals, remember, are those that are in the center of the periodic table. Down below a little bit, those are your coppers, your irons, so on and so forth. So, if the first element is a transition metal, go right here, yes, we're going to deal with that, or no. That's what we're going to deal with here, right? No. If it's not a transition metal, it's pretty simple. The first element stays the same, and the second element endings changes to IDE. So let's say, for instance, I've got NaCl. That's a simple one. If I'm going to write the name, it would be sodium in my periodic table, chloride. All right, I drop the INE and I add IDE. All right, anything from the periodic table and the nonmetal, we're going to add the IDE or add IDE to it. Now, if it's not, if the first element stays the same, okay, if it's yes, there's a transition metal, okay, the second element's ending always changes to IDE. We're going to find the charge of the transition metal and place in parentheses as a Roman numeral. So I'm going to make one up. Let's say I've got iron, and I'm making this up from scratch. I know one. Iron chloride. FeCl3. Okay. I've got a transition metal here. Okay. And okay, so I'm going to name it. So chlorine I know is -1. So that means to have the charge here, to make this a neutral charge, that means that has to have a +3 charge. So the name for this would be iron, and in parentheses, Roman numeral 3, chloride. Not bad, okay? So if you got a transition metal, use the Roman numerals. If you don't, don't. Now let's look at the next little deal. So we got the metal, a non-metal, and a non-metal. Well, now we've got a polyatomic ionic compound. So those are means we're going to have to use those charges that I gave you with the polyatomic ions. All right. So first question we're going to ask, is the first element a transition metal? If it is, we're going to do just like we did before. It's a yes. We're going to have to determine what the what the charge is on that transition metal, and we're going to have to use Roman numerals, just like we did before. If it's not a transition metal, then we've got it pretty simple. Alright, first element stays the same, we name it. Then the second element, the name comes from the polyatomic ion on the chart, and I gave that to you. And you can use that on the test, but also on some of the periodic tables. Let's do an example. So let's say we've got iron chlorate. Well, just by me saying iron chlorate, that doesn't help me at all. So let's say we have iron 2 chlorate. Alright, so I'm going to write that like so. Fe, or it's going to be written like this, Fe Cl, chlorate, O3, parentheses, and then I'm going to have, I said iron 3. I'll have a 3 there. So the name of that would be iron 1, 2, 3, and then that would be chlorate. I got the name from the chart and that formula for the polyatomic from the chart that I gave you, periodic table, or else that chart. So again, we got to use that chart. So the metal, non-metal, and non-metal? No. Is the transition metal? No. So the first element stays the same. Second element comes from the polyatomic ion chart. So let's say I gave you calcium carbonate. I like that. Made a lot of money with it. Calcium carbonate. Alright, so I know Ca is a +2. And then I look for carbonate, which is CO3. I think that's a -2. So to get the charge balance, a neutral charge balance, that'd be -2. That'd be +2. That's CaCO3. We're done. Not hard. Okay, now we got one more little thing we have to deal with here, right? Metal, a non-metal, and a non-metal. What type of compound is it? You have a non-metal and a non-metal. It's molecular. Alright, so we're going to use prefix to denote the number of atoms present. The first element, the ending stays the same. The second element will change to IDE. Now, we're going to use prefixes. We're only going to use mono on the second element, not on the first. So let's say I've got CO. That would be carbon monoxide. Say I have CO2. That would be carbon dioxide. Two different molecules. Alright? So we've got to use those prefixes for that. So that should give you some ideas. It should help you out a lot when you're doing your test tomorrow and you're doing your naming. Again, non-metal and non-metal, it's going to be molecular, each prefixes. A metal, a non-metal, and a non-metal, you've got a polyatomic. You know you're going to use your chart. A metal and a non-metal, ionic compound, do what you know. Alright? And so I think you're going to do very well. So this is Coach Scott saying, hey, y'all have a great evening, and well, this hullabaloo, connect.